is a political analyst. Harvey, I'm sure you're well conversant with the law. It seems quite a process to remove these commissioners from office.
Yes, it is quite a process, and bearing in mind that the Jubilee sides seems to have a majority in the National Assembly as well as the Senate, and they do control the executive. I think it will be an exercise in intellectual futility for now to pursue the removal of the IEBC commissioners. Something that cannot be effectively done within a period of 1 month to enable a replacement in time for the next election. I think, in my view, if I was to be asked, it is quite clear that IEBC tampered with this entire transmission and tallying as well as announcement of the election's results in favor of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And if you look at it from that point of view, you begin to see why in their boisterous response, both President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy are insistent that IEBC, as currently constituted, should conduct the election.
So you also agree that within the time that we have, it's not practical to get these commissioners out of office?
No, it's not possible.
It's not possible. Now, Mark, this is where I want to bring you in. Do you think what NASA is saying is now being populist because it's not practical?
You know, the reality of the matter is, let's look at our history. In 2007, we removed the electoral chair then. In 2013, we had a new one, and we removed him in 2016. In 2017, we've had a new one. Now we are claiming we want to remove that one as well. We need to learn from our history and realize that it's not about changing commissioners. We need to change tact in this particular case. What do we need to do? We need to have proper checks and balances, both in terms of party agents, in terms of the judiciary, in terms of even the parties involved in this particular election, to keep the IEBC in check. Because as Harvey has put it, it is impossible to change these commissioners and then have a new set approved by Parliament, which basically is not really functional because the executive's powers during this time is also limited. So Parliament is not fully functional. You're not going to be able to push it. And even if you get people to demonstrate, even if they resign of their own volition, how are you going to replace them? The best strategy is to work with the IEBC, and if you found out what it is that they did wrong, can you make sure they don't do that again?
Harvey, do you think NASA is ready to work with IEBC as currently constituted, bearing in mind during the petition, during the Supreme Court ruling, the judges had clearly indicated that there were very many irregularities?
IEBC as an institution is well structured under the Constitution and the statute. It has all the capacity to conduct a free and fair election, even on a short notice. That is not in doubt.
Yes.
Now, what is in doubt is the capacity of the individuals there. And when Chairman Chebukati came to the podium and spoke to the nation, he said, when we took over as commissioners, the Secretariat remained as it was before, and we didn't have any control over what it was doing. Look, Chebukati is a very senior lawyer, is a very elderly Kenyan citizen. He speaks with a lot of wisdom. And what you needed to decipher from what he was saying is that the people who took us where we are the Secretariat. And who is the Secretariat? The Secretariat consists of Ezra Chiloba, it consists of Praxedes Tororei, and those are the individuals. And you can see some of these fellows below the rank of Chiloba have been there even during the time of Kivuitu. What is the way forward? In the next 21 days or less, the Supreme Court will give its reasoned decision on what actually went wrong. And I think as day succeeds...
That is the full ruling,
right?
Yes.
As the day succeeds night, you'll be able to see several individuals being mentioned in that judgment.
Yes.
My view is these fellows need to be taken to court ASAP. And even if they've been taken to court, both the key players, NASA and Jubilee, have to put in place mechanisms to ensure that what happened on 8th of August does not happen. Now, how do you achieve this? First of all, Safran Mofo, who was behind the KIM system, cannot be allowed to oversight the transmission anymore. The system is compromised. Al Ghuraya cannot be allowed to print the ballot papers anymore. Ballot papers can be printed at government printer. The transmission can be done using the Postal Corporation of Kenya or any courier, so that it's quite evident we will not have an electronic transmission. If if NASA will be gullible enough to accept another electronic transmission, the results will be torpedoed the same way they were torpedoed the other time. Now that the electronic system has failed, let's go back to manual. We collect the results at the constituency.
These are all options, right?
Yes. We collect the results at the constituency tallying center. The returning officer should travel from that constituency and come to Nairobi in the company of 2 agents of Jubilee, 2 agents of NASA, and a policeman. There are only 290 constituencies. Then they come to Bomas or whatever place will have been designated as the National Tallying Center, and each and every of those 290 returning officer reads their results in public, and then they are tabulated and a decision made.
Yes, and I'm glad you both have agreed that, getting these commissioners out of office is not practical within 60 days. Mark, you've had Javier saying that, this printing job should be given to the government printer. NASA itself didn't have faith in Al Ghurair, which is an international company. Do you think they're going to trust government printer?
Javier has shocked me. I always thought he's older than me, but maybe his memory is fading. Javier, I'll remind you that at the height of rigging in this country, it was the transportation of ballot papers and forms that led to alterations of those forms and ballot stuffing. Because let me tell you the truth, the distance between Naivasha and Nairobi is very long for the people who want to use those same police to hijack those ballot papers to swing an election on either side. The Kenya needs to remember that the reason why we procured these kits to be able to transfer data quickly was to shorten the time within which most of those forms used to be manipulated. So let us not throw away the baby with the water. The water is dirty. What is the dirty water? The dirty water is this. The case was based on the fact that the text message came through before the scanned form came through, meaning that the results were not verified. So what they need to fix is the verified data. It is actually to NASA's advantage to keep the KIMS kit in play because they have already found what was wrong with the system. They have found out what was wrong with the transmission. So what do? Keep the playing field as it is. Do not allow there to be an opportunity for things to be changed. And if you go that route, Harvey, I will tell you for free that it will go back to 1992, where ballot papers used to come out, Harvey, as one in Shihoe village. And by the time he gets to Nairobi, Yusuf, who was running in Othista, is now the MP.
Now, Harvey, I'll go back to your comfort zone, which is, of course, matters law. But before that, NASA were very vocal, talking about, IEBC should be disbanded. And in today's rally, they made fresh demands. They were targeting or zeroing in on the IEBC CEO, Ezra Chiloba. Is this some sort of a new strategy from NASA?
No, it's not a new strategy. For a long period of time, Ezra Chiloba has been targeted as the person on whose shoulder the highest responsibility for manipulation rests. In fact, I think if you look at the manner in which he conducted himself in the procurement of the Al Ghurair contract, nothing can be clearer as that in respect of how sterilized the environment is. And look, the popular view is Ezra Chiloba is the fulcrum behind the manipulation and interference with the KIM system. He should be the first one to be charged. I think there are no two ways about it. He should be the first one to be charged. When he's out of the picture, of course, arrangements ought to be made to ensure that the election is conducted within the 60 days. But let people take a plea. Let people await their trial whilst they are in remand. It's only by doing so that we will not have a repeat performance where somebody is working for the IEBC on trust of the public, interferes with the popular will of the Kenyans, and is manipulated by a player in an electoral contest to achieve a desired outcome, which in all practical purposes is a coup. In fact, we can hear them making a lot of noise that the judiciary has conducted a civilian coup. No, it is them who conducted a computerized coup. And to that extent, therefore, this must be put to an end as soon as possible.
Do you think NASA's these fresh demands they're bringing up by zeroing in on Ezra Chiloba, do you think they've realized that it's not possible or practical to get these commissioners out of office? Are they choosing their battle wisely now?
I think even just based on what ruling we will get, obviously there'll be a lot of people within the IEBC functional staff, that's the Secretariat, and the people who've been hired by IEBC at the various stages. There is internal mechanisms within IEBC to even discipline their members, even before you got the court direction. So I think it's a smarter move in terms of targeting someone who's a CEO versus a commissioner, because a commissioner requires the legal process that you talked about before. Now, that being said, the ladies of Kenya will be very sad, because it would have gone from Chiloba to Chilobe to Chilobai. You know what I mean?
That's a totally different debate.
But that's just on a light note. On a serious note, what needs to happen, and what NASA needs to get very right very quickly, is they need to campaign and not fight IEBC. Those two things, they need to separate. They can have their lawyers and their party officials deal with IEBC separately from what it is that their campaign is. You cannot continue to make the IEBC the center of your campaign, because what NASA needs and desperately needs is to have its people come out to support them and not depress the same people, because the message will be, we did it again. What stops it from happening again? So what you do, you've got to give them a message of hope. You understand? And fighting IEBC is not going to deliver that for NASA.
Harvey, immediately after the ruling, we had a briefing from the IEBC chair, that is Wafula Chebukati, saying that he's going to conduct some sort of investigation and find the officials who are culpable. Do we expect to see heads rolling in the next few days?
Well, if sufficient pressure is put by the public to ensure that the results are achieved, I think we may reach that end. I want to take you back during the hearing of this election petition, in response to the complaint that certain state officers were being used in the campaign. The IEBC lawyer said, yes, that came to our attention. We notified the Director of Public Prosecution to look into the matter. We are aware that the Director of Public Prosecution instructed the Director of Criminal Investigation to take action. But look, these two entities that IEBC was talking about, they are entities that are within the full control of the Jubilee machinery. You cannot expect the Director of Public Prosecution, you cannot expect the Director of Criminal Investigation to go and arrest Honorable Mwangi Kiunjuri or Honorable Musheru or many other of those ministers who are accused of participating in this. But anyway, I think the decision by Justice Maraga could be something that many other public officers need to emulate. Kiraiko Tobiko is an accomplished lawyer. It's only for a few years lately that he has been a big disappointment. It is his responsibility to wake up very early in the morning on Monday or Tuesday, go to IEBC, look at the reports that were filed in court. The Kim's server scrutiny report was filed in court. Make steps, recommend quick investigations on these individuals. Individuals can be investigated within a period of 2 days. Let them be charged. Otherwise, we'll only have one saint in the name of Justice Maraga who is prepared to sacrifice his life and his career. Yet every Kenyan is determined to compromise the system. Those officers are supposed to be independent officers. So it is therefore a very heavy responsibility that Keriako Tobiko must undertake with extreme dispatch. Otherwise, all gains that have been made in respect of the decision that was given by the Supreme Court will be lost within a few days.
Mark, hypothetically speaking, let's say the NASA leaders remain with whatever they've said, that they don't want IEBC to conduct these repeat elections. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, you know, the thing is, as we've determined before, it's very difficult to find a legal way around removing the commissioners in the time that has been stipulated by the Constitution. They have two options, basically. Number one is to go the mass action route. Now, the problem with the mass action route is that it depresses its own supporters, because you'll go there day one, nothing happens, day two, nothing happens, week 3, week 4. And then let's remember that we do not necessarily have the full 58 days towards an election. The IEBC could come out and say that we're having elections by the end of the month or by early next month. So they do not have the luxury of time. So that might not be a viable option. What I predict that NASA probably, if they wanted to be wise, would do is leave the legal and the technocratical fight to their party technocrats, the clever people, their lawyers, the strategists, to fight the IEBC fight while they go on the campaign trail and try to energize their base to show up and vote in large numbers. Because one of the things that is known worldwide about election rigging and election manipulation is the more people turn out, the less chance you have for any form of manipulation, because they feel that 98% mark. So what you want to do if you are NASA is you want a lot of people to turn up and vote. You do not necessarily want a lot of people to turn up and cry foul on the streets. These two things, they need to choose which strategy they're picking, and they need to choose it quickly.
And speaking of lawyers, we have Javi here with us. So Javi, do you think, what are some of the options out there for NASA?
Well, it was quite evident that IEBC did not want to give full disclosure to enable a complete scrutiny of the KIMS.
Yes.
I think the most important thing that NASA must undertake right now is to initiate litigation as soon as possible for a complete examination of the KIMS machine. And this they are entitled to under the Constitution. And the moment we're able to ascertain for a fact what went wrong in KIMS, and if that which went wrong intentionally, we will be able to come to the root of this problem. Because look, the entire election was conducted in a very good manner until up to the point of transmission. And the investment by the people of Kenya on KIMS is a colossal amount of money. This KIMS is supposed to sustain the election not only today, but subsequent elections. And if we are going for an election with a defective transmission machine, then we are repeating the same mistake. So first thing first, KIMS must be opened. If anything is to go by, Al Ghuraya must be surcharged. That 1.2 extra ballots that were printed, these forms that do not appear to have a serial number, these forms that appear not to have a barcode or a watermark indicator, where did they originate from? And this has to be done within a short period of time to ensure that much as they prepare for the election in the manner in which my colleague has indicated.
One might say that is now water under the bridge because we're heading to a fresh election.
Well, you keep on crossing this bridge, so however much the water passes, you need to ensure that the bridge is sustainable. And this is the most important thing that they must put a pillar on right now.
Let's talk about the petitions from these other leaders. You know, the people who've lost the governor's position, there are those who've lost the MP's position. So, Mark, from your own observation, immediately the Chief Justice and, of course, the bench invalidated President Uhuru Kenyatta's election. Do you think we can see some sort of an avalanche petitions?
Let me tell you, being the businessman that I am, I'm hoping Harvey can give me a job in his law firm, because the floodgates for litigation are going to open quite literally coming Monday. Why? Because let's remember, there were 12,000 candidates who did not get into office. Those are 12,000 possible litigants in the next, and it has to be settled within the next 6 months. So there's a huge probability that a lot of these governors, MPs, and people who run from those offices are actually scared for the positions because of the litigations that are coming. What will be interesting to note, though, is between NASA and Jubilee, who will be able to harness the energies and the powers of those who came number 2 and number 3 in the various positions. That's where the game is going to be played. When could NASA, for example, convince someone to join their side and say, you know what, it was stolen from me? Or could Jubilee convince people to tell them that, you know what, NASA has nothing for you, come and join us? That is going to be the question. So there's going to be a lot of litigation for sure. But how that litigation is going to play out in the political field, that remains to be seen. And it depends on the strategic prowess of either side.
Your view on that, Harvey?
Absolutely. Look, there is a very big comparison between what happened now and what happened in 2007. 2007, the entire process was interfered with to create the impression that Kibaki was winning as against Raila. And as a result of that, the Tarakanitis, the Juja, the Tiati came up. And it looked like somebody has gone back many years behind and replicated what happened. And much as a petition was filed against the election of retired President Kibaki, it wasn't pursued because of the eventual coming into place of the Grand Coalition. But most of those election petitions that survived the technical threshold of dismissal for want of service were determined in favor of the petitioners.
Yeah.
It is therefore my view, bearing in mind the theory that was successfully espoused on behalf of Raila about this consistent margin of 11%, it is most likely that the same formula was applied in many of the strongholds where NASA appears to have lost key governors, key senators.
So basically you're saying some of these politicians might as well have strong cases.
Absolutely.
Now, one final question. There have been a lot of confusion between the ruling, of course, that was provided by the court. What we're heading to in 57 days, I believe, is a rerun, right? It's not a runoff. So do we expect other individuals also to contest in this election for the presidents? Now,
there is a confusion that was created by the 2013 decision in Raila versus Kenyatta. That Supreme Court indicated that in the event that there will be another election, it's only those individuals who participated in the petition that will be allowed to participate in the fresh election. Look, that decision was erroneous because you cannot bind individuals who are not party to a particular case on a decision made therein. If you are to ask for my honest legal opinion, there is no preclusion to all those presidential candidates who participated in this contest in again participating
to be barred
in the
from contesting.
Because
most people are surprised when Third Way Alliance presidential candidate Ekuru Aukot said that he's going to be on the ballot this time round. Mark, before I get to your final comments, we're back in campaigns again.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we're back in campaigns. I am looking at the both coalitions. I don't think they've gotten their heads quite in the game. There's a lot of pain and a lot of joy, and there's no clear strategy yet in terms of what do you go back with a message to your electorate about. How are you going to maintain these people that you proverbially won in the last election? And then which data are you going to use to even map out what it is that you won? Because now everything that you won or lost is up for contention. So the strategists are sitting in the back room. They're trying to look at the numbers, and they're also trying to see how do we turn this particular ruling into our advantage? How do we take that ruling and turn it into an advantage for Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta? How do we take it and turn it into an advantage for Raila Amolo Odinga? Those are the questions that are happening. I don't think they've settled yet because they're making a lot of what I call political hot air statements, but it's going to settle down pretty soon, and they'll get down to the core of campaigning.
Your final comment, Harvey, because it seems people on the House on the Hill are not yet settled.
Well, finally, NASA has been able to release its final presidential tally, which clearly indicates that Raila Odinga won with a very commanding lead of almost 1.7 million votes between him and Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, in my view, what Raila Odinga and his team must do with extreme conviction is to go and ensure that those individuals who voted for him are still available to vote. And this time, please adopt the poll. Don't make us go back to the lamentation we gave on that fateful Thursday and the subsequent Friday when we all lost hope. Because it's quite clear that the chest thumping on the part of President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto is intended to scare the support base of Raila. It is quite clear that these fellows do not have the numbers. They didn't have the numbers. What Raila and his team must do is to protect the numbers and ensure that the turnout is so enormous.
Mark, very briefly, because we're almost out of time. Very briefly.
Let me just correct Harvey on this matter. It would be very foolish for any strategist to walk into this next election thinking that either of them won. There is no evidence. The fact that the judiciary ruled the way it did tells you, like in 2007, you can't tell who was the winner. If you assume Raila won, you are wrong. If you assume Uhuru won, you are wrong, because as a strategist, you start on a worst-case scenario where they both lost. And now they have to fight to win.
And that is why we have an election. Thank you very much, Nelson Harvey, for your input. Always a pleasure to have you on board.